So in this Battletech podcast, we're going to look at the tactic, or I should say answer the question, when do you start shooting? When things are in range, when do you start shooting? In my opinion, immediately. As soon as we are in range, and for the most part, this is going to be at that extreme hex level. It's going to be AC-2s, AC-5s, long-range missiles, maybe a PPC. As soon as a mech is in range, a vehicle's in range, something's in range, I'm generally going to start shooting. The question is at what frequency? And the reason why I say start shooting when you're in range, and maybe it's obvious, maybe it's not, everyone has a plan. And as your lance is moving forward, as your unit of combined arms is moving forward, I'm going to have a general idea of what you're trying to do. This is going to be, likewise with my lance, you're going to kind of see, based on what we've selected, based on positioning, modified or influenced by the mission that we're playing. But there is some hidden knowledge. I don't really know what's going on yet. I have some ideas, especially if there's two mechs working in tandem, that it could go both ways. As soon as you start shooting, your opponent has to commit really, really fast. It's going to give insight into what exactly is going on. So the sooner I can do that further out at range, the sooner or the better I will be able to adapt. Now, this is modified by heat, and this is modified by the speed of the opposing forces that you're facing. Secondary to this, Battletech is Battletech, and crazy stuff happens in Battletech when you roll some dice. It's only an autocannon 2. It's only a long-range missile 5-pack, but I can hit you in the head. I could hit you in a critical torso spot. Something crazy could happen. I could hit you with a motive hit and immobilize your vehicle. I could hit the crew. There is, most recent, the absolute craziest thing that happened in Battletech. It was a summoner, stock summoner. I'm playing Jade Falcon, clans, and I was going up against, it wasn't a Manticore, it was House Davian. I'll have to look back in the picture archive. Antaros, it was a heavy tank. It was a very, very heavy tank, and I was not looking forward to engaging it, especially because it was aggressively pushing forward. It had range. It had a turret on there. And certainly it's not going to match the firepower of my clan mech, but it's going to put a little bit of a hurt on there. And I really needed that summoner. I have two summoners, Thor and Loki. I really needed both of them to be somewhere else. And Loki was kind of off doing something. Thor was being a little bit delayed by this tank. Okay, I know I'm going to defeat it. I'm reasonably positive that I'm going to defeat it, but it's going to be a slug, and it's going to cost me a lot of armor bubbles to do it. But we got to do what we have to do on there. First shot out with my missiles, roll to hit. Okay, 12, roll to confirm crit, crew killed. Just I shot one of those missiles right into the viewport, right where it was, and just pulped everything inside. And when those moments happen in Battletech, you're like, what just happened? What? So the odds of that happening, maybe if I have to unofficially crunch the numbers, those of you who are math and theory heavy will, maybe 1 out of every 12 games, there's kind of this moment where you're like, we need to pause and just figure out the craziness that just happened on there. It's not going to happen if we don't start rolling those dice. So as soon as we're in range, I'm going to start shooting. Now, for the most part, a lot of mechs will have 1 or 2 long-range weapons. Could be an LRM-5, could be an AC-5 on there, or a PPC. While on the opposite spectrum, some mechs are dedicated long-range units. A perfect example is archers and longbows on there. Maybe longbows more than archers, compared to, say, a grasshopper. I'm trying to keep it roughly in the same class. Grasshopper's a close-in machine. Grasshopper's a close-in brawler, but it has the long-range missile 5-pack in the head. So as soon as I'm at range, I'm going to start shooting that out there. If you have a dedicated long-range group or a long-range mech, yes, absolutely, when you're in range, you're going to start shooting to do the most damage that you can. But if all you have is long-range support, I need to take into account heat generation and just how fast the opposing mechs or units are going to close with me. So if I'm running my longbow, I've got 2 stock two long-range missile 20 packs, and the two 5 packs. Opening salvo, I'm going to shoot everything. I'm going to try and just hit you with everything. I've got the redundancy, especially if it's a light or a medium mech. If I can tag you, that's going to put on some serious hurt before we even get into crit possibilities on there. Even against a heavy or an assault mech, I'm going to try and start, you're pulling your stalker forward, I'm going to try and strip some of that armor. But now as we close, I'm probably going to drop to just the 20s, or maybe a 20 and a 5 on there. I'm going to slow my rate of fire, because as we are closing and I'm pulling away or I'm maneuvering, a steady rate of fire is more important than an all-out barrage every single turn. Of course, if you're really fast and you're a light mech, maybe for the 2 or 3 turns that you're incoming, I'm going to try and hit you with everything. There's always kind of a case by case, but a lot depends on the sustained fire of how fast you move. If I have something like a Blackjack, one of my favorite mechs, if I've got a Rifleman, if I've got a Jaeger mech, something that has low heat, high range autocannon ability, well then it's kind of set. I don't have to worry about heat. I'm going to fire the maximum every turn on there. So when do you start firing? Immediately. If you are in range, you start rolling those dice. You know you're over the target when you start taking fire. So we want to just immediately start getting some dice down on the table, which is why, in my opinion, to go back to kind of loop back around to the start of this podcast, lots of ways to design lances, lots of different tactics. Even if you say, look, I want to design an energy lance, or I want to design a close-in brawling type lance. You want to kind of dedicate it in one force area. It is good to have 1 or 2 long-range, not dedicated units, but even if you're specializing in short-range, fast-moving, brawling, hit-and-run, some sort of autocannon, some sort of LRM. It could be mounted on a light mech, or just something to reach out and touch, simply to gain that insight into what your opponent is planning, or you're going to find out really fast what they're forcing to commit. You know, if they're running a medium or light mech up the flank on the side, and you're trying to figure out, okay, is this a distraction? Is this some legitimate target because the light or the medium is working to look on the side of the table to try and access some of my backfield artillery or backfield units? You know, what it could be a lot of different things. If I start hitting it with long-range shots and soaking it with those shots, the smart thing would be to pull back out of range, unless my opponent has committed that light or medium to a very, very specific task. You're going to know that information as soon as you start shooting. Until you start shooting, the entire decision tree, the logic tree, is open.